missing a couple of counselors, but we have a quorum, so I like to do things on time. So we're going to start the Charlottesville City Council meeting for November the 17th, 2025. Madam Councilor, as Lord enters the room, can you call the roll, please?
Councilor Ostron.
Here.
We hope to see Councilor Payne soon. Vice Mayor Pinkston.
Here.
Councilor Snook.
Here.
Mayor Wade.
Here. Is there, we do have one change to the agenda. Staff has requested that we defer the Derry Bridge Road project to the December 1st meeting, but can we get a motion to approve minus that project?
So moved.
Second.
Second, and we will take a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All opposed, please say no. Motion passes 4-0. The meeting will be divided into three sections. The first will be a work session where we will hear and discuss presentations that do not require council vote, followed by a closed session, and then we will have a regular business meeting at 6:30. Today we have three reports. The first one would be Jaunt, and Mike Murphy will come up. And I served on Jaunt board for like 25 years. It's before you, Mike, so I know the building well, so it's great service. Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me to talk a little bit about Jaunt today. I have more slides than minutes, as I understand it, so I will move at a brisk pace, but I know that many of you are aware of our service. So thanks again, Mr. Mayor, members of council, City Manager Sanders. I can use this, huh? All right, so I'm going to try and tell you a little bit about Jaunt and how it relates to the city and to the region. No, not that. Okay, yeah, all right. So, very strange construct at Jaunt for those of you who don't know this. It's a public service corporation, a corporate construct that hasn't existed for new organizations in the state of Virginia since 1984. But it does mean that Charlottesville is a part owner of Jaunt, and there are certain powers that you have with your shareholder representative, Mr. Sanders, and certain powers that you have with the 4 people that council appoints to our 14-member board. There are 5 jurisdictions that have voting privileges at the board: Charlottesville, Albemarle, Louisa, Nelson, Fluvanna, and Charlottesville and Albemarle essentially have double the voting power of those outlying jurisdictions. We do serve Greene and Buckingham, but they do not have governance responsibilities on the board. They're purchasing service. And just 2 months ago, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the very first ride at Jaunt in September of 1975. And so we are in the midst of a campaign where we're trying to get stories from you and the public about your interaction with Jaunt. And so one of my asks at the end will be that you engage with that and put the word out as you're talking with constituents in the city. I want to give you a little bit of an idea about the scope and scale of what we do at Jaunt. So as you know, the city that you govern is 10.26 square miles. And this is the overlay of the CAT routes, and you see that it goes over into Albemarle County, but is not inclusive of every part of the city. And so that CAT footprint is a little bit less than the city overall, 9.84 square miles. And when you talk in planning circles about what does it mean to get on public transit as an able-bodied passenger, they're usually saying, well, within a quarter mile of that bus stop, which extends the reach of CAT to 18.5 square miles. And for ADA, because we are the complementary paratransit provider for CAT, that buffer turns into 3/4 mile, which means that we actually go to somebody's door and take them where they need to go within the service area. That extends it to 3 times the size of the city, 30.67 square miles. And Jaunt is a little bit bigger than that. We have almost 2,800 square miles, about 90 times larger than just the area that is ADA service area, and of course the whole metro area here, plus Buckingham when you think about the planning district. In the year that we're in, we have been experiencing some increase, and like most service providers, Jaunt has been increasing steadily ever since everybody's trips dropped almost to zero during COVID. But basically how you can think about it is that about 20,000 trips every month are coming through Jaunt. And how do those 20,000 trips happen? About 74% of those are people who book a ride to where they want to go. Right now, over the phone or through a subscription, and in the future, hopefully through some software products. You're familiar, I know all of you, with what's happening with your MicroCat service, and we'll be talking a little bit about how we'll be doing very similar work in the days ahead. About 56% of that is the paratransit work for the demand response. And when we think about the demand response, that means that almost 100,000 trips, 97,000 trips a year are the ADA service that we're doing on behalf of CAT. And that's required whenever you take the federal money, the $5307 for small urban areas. And so when somebody goes onto the website, what do they see about moving within Charlottesville when you are ADA eligible? Well, first of all, they need to go to CAT and be found eligible, because anybody who doesn't have eligibility needs to ride the CAT bus. That's the expectation per the federal government. But when you are eligible, then you can ride every day of the year except for Christmas Day from basically 6 in the morning until 11 p.m. What makes people ride transit? I know that you all know a little bit about this, but I want you to just see how Charlottesville stacks up against the region and what Jaunt is doing. And so one thing that you need to know about is people get on transit when you have the right density. Well, Charlottesville has the biggest advantage in the region as far as that goes. And older people are more likely to get on public transportation than younger folks, and you see what that looks like in the region as well. People with a disability, which for the city of Charlottesville is our special focus, and you see the density particularly on the edges of Charlottesville and going into Albemarle County. And you see that you have people in poverty are a little bit more likely to get on public transportation, and we have a little higher concentration in the city than a lot of the parts of the region. And finally, the percentage of households that don't own a car, which you see some intensity in the city as well. So obviously Charlottesville is a good place or a good candidate to have and expand public transportation, and I know that it's one of your main priorities and focuses over this last year. Different way for people to digest it if you don't love the maps as much. This is just a table for you all to think about later about what the raw numbers are. What you would see if you were to come to a board meeting or participate in that way, and I want to acknowledge that you all have 4 board members. One of them is in the room today because you recently appointed your finance director, Mr. Cullinan, to our board. And I'm lucky enough to have hired a new CFO in the last 6 months, Mrs. Corbin, who's in the back for moral support, just in case, you know, it's hard for me to come back to Chambers after all these years. About half of the rides that are ADA are within the city limits, of course, because of where you go into the county. The other half are county residents. The county is the biggest funder of Jaunt, and we'll show you some budget stuff in a minute. When I came to Jaunt, I was asked to come off of the board at Jaunt and serve as the CEO on an interim basis in kind of an emergency circumstance. And then we agreed that I would stay for a period of time. And so what did I see at that time? Well, we need to anchor employee behaviors to values. I could still tell you what the city values were for my 25 years here and anywhere I've ever been. If we want people to really work together, we have to be values connected, and so that was the first thing we did. And so we have a walking billboard with all those buses and with the uniforms we wear, and so you will see on the back of every shirt that we print People Service Connection to remind people. And the board had not engaged in any kind of strategic thinking for about 6 years at the time that I was joining. And so in January and March of this year, we engaged in an exercise to really march through all of the major considerations that would allow them to make priorities for the next year or two. And these were the headings for that discussion. That was 2 days worth of retreat, and I'm not going to try and get into that level of detail with you, but I want you to know the planful way in which we're asking the board to set priorities for Charlottesville and the rest of the region. And so that led to about 25 areas that were initiatives that we might prioritize. And in the end, these 5 areas here, we'll spend a little bit more time on this slide, were those that were selected by the board. And the first is, you're all well aware that you have endorsed the creation of the Charlottesville-Albemarle Regional Transit Authority, which means that tomorrow night will be the last meeting of the RTP after many years of that initiative. And I've been serving on that with Vice Mayor Pinkston and Councilor Oshrin for the last 2 years. But it's important to the Jaunt Board that we continue to maintain an active presence as CARTA develops, and I believe that the vision is that each of the transit providers from the area, CAT, Jaunt, and UTS, will be present at all the future CARTA meetings beginning in 2026. We have been the complimentary paratransit provider for the city of Charlottesville since 1987. It's a really big part of the identity of Jaunt, and the board would like to see that stay that way. It's been a little while since we've had a written agreement with the city of Charlottesville, and the last person to sign that contract is some guy named Mike Murphy, so it's been out of date for a period of time. So that is something that is in process with Garland, and we've been waiting to make sure that the results from the triennial evaluation would be in case anything needed to be added to that contract, and I'm hopeful that that contract will be before us and staff and potentially you sometime soon. You all are aware that we have been doing this paratransit for a long time, and that in the way that things happen today, you need to know 1 to 7 days ahead of time where you want to go and when, right? And based on the success of the MicroCat pilot, you know that there are people who want a more on-demand type of transit rather than a demand response type of transit. And so we do have money from the state now to pilot in the city and in Greene County a different approach to scheduling that's going to facilitate that live service for ADA in the future. And then the 5th bullet I'll skip down to, since it relates to this, is that Jaunt has been handicapped by the fact that we've had the same type of scheduling software for almost 3 decades now, which is not best in class by a long shot. And so we have secured $1.5 million from the state for a new, much more technologically advanced software solution that's going to allow people to book on their phones, call into the call center, use a laptop or desktop in the future. And then finally, we can't be the great team that serves the region if we don't have a system that is focused on giving people feedback and providing performance evaluations. And at the time that I was coming in, most of the people on the team didn't know the last time they had had one. And of course, it was vital that we make that happen. So in the year that we're in, we have a $21 million budget, and you see that a good portion of that is 3/4 operating. The rest is capital. It's particularly large in capital this year because we have a $3 million parking lot project in the queue, because for the entirety of Jaunt's history, 50 years, they've never had their assets secured. And so this will be the first time that we have fencing, cameras, lighting that is appropriate for an organization of this type. We'll talk a little bit as we go forward about how the 26 budget differs from the 27 budget. There are new studies in this year or in next year, because one thing that we've done a lot of at Jaunt and in the region is study things, and now the state is certainly eager for lots of implementation. This is a little roll-up so that you understand what the budget has looked like over the last 3 years, and I will talk about the 27 budget to wrap this up. Jaunt tries to be a great steward of your dollars and every locality's dollars, and that's why by policy, we have the ability, when we end the year with excess capital, to retain a certain percentage for operating reserves and capital reserves, and then we distribute the remainder to the localities. Last year, we distributed over $130,000 back to Charlottesville. I can't give you the exact dollar amount because my board hasn't seen our audit yet, but they will see it on December 10th. But I do expect it to be more than double that amount from the FY25 year. So I'm sure Mr. Cullinan's ears perked up about that. In thinking about how to budget, I was certainly influenced in the time that I spent working for this city and laying out some concepts for the board as we go about thinking about what this looks like. And so I want you all in broad brush to understand how did we write the budget that's already been submitted to the city of Charlottesville and Albemarle County, because as you know, budgeting is now a year-long practice, not something that just happens at a particular time of year so you can vote each April. And so the areas in which we need to set those priorities are, what does the service look like? And for the city, that service is just a little bit flat, and it depends a little bit on what you all decide about your CAT expansion. Everything you decide for CAT has an impact on Jaunt, whether that's time of day or days of the week or new routes. All of that creates new buffers where we would need to serve all the people within 3/4 of a mile of the new stop. And we are looking at some modest expansion, particularly in the rural jurisdictions, because we get a lot of people into town at the beginning of the day, so take them home at the end of the day. But in between, there's not a lot for them to do, and so we're trying to add midday service in a lot of places in the year ahead. On the capital side, we're actually trying to do a little bit less, and I won't bore you with a lot of details about all these funding types, but basically, for those of you who've paid attention to Jaunt for a period of time, 4 or 5 years ago, there were some problems with the accounting of the organization that led to losing a whole year of state funds. And during that time, it became that instead of what you hear from Garland about the 4% match rate on some of the capital expenses, it went up to 36% because of the blended use of the fleet. Well, I've spent a lot of time over the last year trying to pitch to the state what our remedies have been and will continue to be, and we are the beneficiary of that in this year because they used a different pot of money that's agnostic on rural versus urban, that's going to have us at 4%. So we saved literally over $1.5 million in capital cost by them being willing to do that this year, which is good news about our partnership with DRPT.
Could I ask on this slide?
Yes, sir.
Maybe this is something I'm supposed to know or I don't. 5311 rates versus 5339 rates?
Yeah, so CAT primarily gets 5307, small urban.
Oh, yeah, that refers to different statutory schemes.
These are federal pots of money. So
Okay.
5311 is for rural only. 5339 doesn't actually care whether or not it's
Okay.
rural or urban.
Thank you.
Yes. And as far as people, we have identified a couple of places that we need additional staff, but we're also understanding that when you have 120 plus people on your team, that they're not all employed 365 days a year. And John has not in the past budgeted for attrition savings, which we are in the year ahead. We're looking carefully at the region. We're looking at COLA that's somewhere in between 3 and 4%. Obviously, particularly for Jaunt, we need to be very aware of the fact that CAT is unionized and we need to have wages that are competitive. I need to make an immediate adjustment when I joined as the interim CEO because even prior to the unionization, Jaunt was lagging CAT by 19% in wages. And so you're never going to attract anybody when you're that far behind. Other operational considerations, there's some ways in which Jaunt needs to continue to invest. We don't have a sophisticated human resources information system. We have 5 different systems that don't always speak to each other well. We need a new finance system. In fact, the product that we use, Great Plains, will no longer be supported by Microsoft within the next couple of years. We need to make some technological advancements. The reservation system that we use is a voice over IP phone system, which the contract was signed off on before we reached full implementation. And I'll say that while we've made a lot of progress, there are some days in which the call center is not as great as I'd like it to be, and so we'll need to continue to revisit that. The University of Virginia, as you may know, is doing an awful lot in the way of thinking about not having as many single passenger vehicles come into the city. I know that Vice Mayor Pinkston and Councilor Oshrin have heard Mr. Silsdorf talk about that they've invested $80.5 million in parking garages recently, and that it's at $35,000 per space. And so they're actively looking at, through their program Wahoo Commute and other ways, trying to get people on commuter buses. And that's where Jaunt can help to provide support, and why they would be giving us extra support in the year ahead. And then finally, we've been looking at, there's a lot of complexity to serving 2,800 square miles and different days of the week and different routes and all that, and we need to tell our story better. And so we recently completed a marketing communication strategy. There's a little rebranding that's going to be coming out along with that, and we just need to continue to invest in communication. It's extraordinarily important. In the budget we just submitted, it's about $1 million less, and big takeaway in that is overall, we're asking the city for all of the service that we do today about $97,000 less starting July 1st than we are receiving in the year that we're in. There's a couple of things that could influence that based on decisions you're making. I know that Garland, who's been a great partner and collaborator to me during the time that I've been here, has shared some of the scenarios about how many drivers and whether to flex up frequencies on certain routes, and whether to add Sunday back or not, and whether to add midnight back to midnight or not. All of those have an impact on Jaunt and how we would need to be staffed. And so the really important part of this presentation, and I'll wrap up, is to say how you can help. One is continue to support the longstanding partnership. We want to continue to be the ADA provider. We have been for 38 years. Remember that CAT changes always mean Jaunt changes. I know that if Garland was here with me, he would really lock arms and encourage you to continue to have fare-free service. I need to really spend just a moment here and say that the cost of bringing on new staff and software and fare boxes is actually probably going to be greater for CAT and Jaunt combined than what you would recover in the fares themselves. And so we should focus on having great service rather than be focusing on complex fare recovery systems. If you're going to return Sunday service, we would need to know that. I will tell you this, and I talk with Garland about it regularly. We never turned off the Sunday service. So literally, Jaunt operates every day but Christmas. And we talk about whether that's a good idea sometimes. And it is a place where if push came to shove and the city and county needed to trim somewhere, we could have some efficiency by not having Sunday service. For me, it's the taking away of something that is hard when it comes to public service, whether you're talking about a route or a frequency. And so there would be a loss to community members, ADA only, and so this is really only city residents I'm talking about. They're the only locality that we serve with Sunday service. But if you feel like in all those scenarios that you're looking like with CAT, that you're not going to be able to resource Sunday for years into the future, then that would be good to know, because then it may be worthwhile to consider a change. And honestly, you know, it can be hard to resource from a human resources standpoint, but we're going to continue to do it until we hear it's a policy decision for you all. At the state level, you should know that there will definitely be some action in the upcoming General Assembly about transit dollars, and you, in fact, will have a special item that's in front of the General Assembly that you're advocating for to get some stopgap funding in front of this body from the Assembly prior to CARTA having the ability to have taxation authority. And so, obviously, that's really important if you want to reach your goals about expansion of service. And at the federal level, while you might have less impact, when the IIJA phases out, we want to make sure that everybody does their best to make sure that there's not a loss of the current transit dollars that are in there. And finally, just remind you that in our 50th year, we'll be making outreach to you about events that will celebrate Jaunt as we close out our 50th year in September of 2026. But we want to hear your stories about how you've engaged with Jaunt, and if you have an opportunity to encourage residents to reach out to us. On our website, there's a special landing area where they can send pictures, videos, or share their stories. I've moved as fast as I can, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, thank you. Michael, do you have any questions, sir?
Yeah, well, good to have you back here. This is your first time back in Chambers. But so you mentioned Fare Free. Is that currently for you all? Is that similar to the city where that's just funded by a state program?
Well, the only time that Jaunt collects fares is when CAT collects fares, because then it's required. And so when CAT turned off fares, then we did too. So since COVID, nobody's collected fares. And that's the only time that we would bring them back, because we had 2 extra FTEs, plus software, plus cash collection, plus a armored car service. All those things make it really undesirable based on the amount of dollars that you're going to recoup.
Mm-hmm. So essentially, the cost of the city if we returned or got rid of, the cost to the city if we retained fare-free service because the state program is ending, Jaunt is not adding to that cost. It's
already baked into the budget as it's been written.
Okay.
Yes.
The other, you mentioned, obviously, CAT has unionized, and that's required across the board, an adjustment in the market on wages and benefits. Where does the organization see itself currently in the conversation of, 1, unionization period, and then 2, your goal for where you want wages and benefits to be? Is the goal match CAT, exceed CAT by a little bit? Like, where's your ideal to kind of settle at? Our
entry-level wage, and I'm going to talk about operators because, that's the environment where in this area between CAT, Jaunt, and the school bus drivers, you require the same type of credentials and certification of like 300 human beings. We are at the same starting pay as CAT. The terms of the agreement for the union don't allow Jaunt employees to reach max as quickly as is specified in the union agreement, but it's only off by a couple years. We do have a band that also caps the top because, every good classification and compensation system has to have a starting, a mid-range, and an end. And so we're closer than we've ever been to CAT. With regard to unionization, at the time that the union was coming to this area and talking with CAT employees, they did talk to some Jaunt employees, and the fact is, and you received a letter from me at some point about this last year that you may or may not recall, Dillon Rule state issue, right? So if it's not specified in the code, then you're not able to do it in the state of Virginia. Public service corporations are not specified in the code, and so we got a legal opinion on that. A local delegate did bring forward language and consulted with us on that language about adding public service corporations to the Code of Virginia about unionization, and it didn't make it forward very long once it was in Richmond.
Yeah, and I know, obviously, following this recent election, it's a very different environment. So, I'm almost anticipating, maybe not this session, but maybe next session, that it's at least a good possibility legislation like that could pass, and kind of what the approach at that point, may be. The final question you touched upon, CARTA, and obviously continuing to participate in CARTA and recognizing the importance of that. And I know there's a long way to go until we would get to this point, but one of the goals is, being able to combine into one agency for funding efficiencies, operational efficiencies. Is that something that is yet being kind of discussed and planned for, or is that kind of waiting until discussions with this new entity, CARTA, develop? Because to me, that's the end goal, is to be able to, ideally bring together CAT, JAUNT, harder to get, but UTS as well, into one service. And that's obviously a huge, huge structural and operational change that would take years of planning.
Yeah. I would say I appreciate your vision. I don't know that there's a unified vision out there about bringing those organizations together from a service perspective, so much as there is about what's required of greatly enhanced and cooperative regional planning. The really, without going too deep into what...
We don't have time to go deep.
Yeah. With the CARTA, happy to come back and talk about that, but, JAUNT is responsible for over 2,700 square miles that at this time are not joining CARTA. And so that would really mean that you would, either want to remove complementary paratransit from JAUNT service and bring it in-house, or B, expect that, the Public Service Corporation would dissolve some of its members, or you would not be a part of it. There's some complexity there. So it is a easy answer to say that I think there's plenty that could be done even before there's funding available. And there are lots of willing and collaborative partners to this process now, which has not always been the case. The question is the authority there to ensure that the region has everything that it should and that you aspire to in serving the public with transit services, or is the ambition to do it with just one entity? Because JAUNT is owned by 5 entities.
Yeah, well, I'll answer because I know there's others, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Natalie, you have any?
Hello. Nice to see you again. I'll just keep it quick with a question back to the excess capital slide, because that's not something we usually see.
Yeah.
And just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about why there is an excess, and is there anything that we can help provide to use up that capital, or is there anything that that could be used for that it's currently not, that you would like to see be added to services?
Yeah, understood. So why is there excess? Part of that is vacancy savings. Part of that is, when the cost of a capital project comes in less than you had imagined, sometimes after COVID, and certainly starting with COVID, buses have, I'm sure that Garland has told you, have really doubled, tripled, quadrupled, in price. And so DRPT had instructed agencies to build in all these escalators. There's a lot of reasons that there is money, and part of it is just sound financial management. And so at the end of the day, when you spend less and you're a public entity, why shouldn't you return a portion of those proceeds back to the localities that contributed them? I'll point out that during the time that I served on the detention and jail boards on behalf of the city, the same types of policies were instituted, and this policy was instituted while I was a board member at John.
Great, thank you.
Brian?
No questions, thank you.
Lloyd?
No question. Thank you.
So yeah, we'll definitely get out some notice about the anniversary. I think that John has a great story to tell and the work that it does in the community. So I'm glad that you're at the helm of it, to steady the ship there and continue to hear great things about the service there. So thank you so much for your service there, sir.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Have a good-
Next, we have Region 10, Dr. Bites, I'm sorry.
I'm going to come over here
Ye-
because that's where it's clear.
Yep.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Lisa Bites. I'm the Executive Director for Region 10. Thank you, Mayor, Councilors, Mr. Sanders, for allowing us to come and present to you today. We're going to spend about 30 minutes on several topics of priority for Region 10. We will not get to all the things, and I'll just say out of the gate that we'll come back whenever you invite us if you'd like to talk about other priorities that we don't touch on. Let's see. Okay, just to level set, we're going to start with an overview of Region 10 for those of you who may not know. Region 10 serves Charlottesville and 5 surrounding localities. Last year, we served about 8,500 people. If you look at our percentages in the localities, you'll notice they do not equal 100%. And that is not because we did social work math around localities. It's because this data represents number of people who receive services based on residence. In addition, Region 10 provides services to people who are experiencing a psychiatric emergency if they're in our catchment area, regardless of residence. And we also are the hub CSB for the 9 community services boards in Region 1, which means that we provide some program and services to additional folks who live across Central Virginia. For the purpose of this conversation, and just so that we're all speaking of data from the same place, this is number of people served by residents, which locality. You'll see that we're primarily serving adults at 63%, and of those, 47% have a serious mental illness. Our children, 30%, with 38% of those children having a serious emotional disturbance. What's true as well is that folks come through our door with multiple needs and a desire to address different domains of their life. This pulls data around primary request for service. What's also important for you to know is that from our third-party payers, 56% of our overall client population receives Medicaid, and that's the funding source for service. I don't know why the clicker seems hard for me. Okay, let's talk about Charlottesville specifically. You will see in this Charlottesville specific slide that the numbers served represent, are congruent with the overall numbers. 74% of the people served in Charlottesville City are adults. Of those, 54% are people with SMI. 56% of the people who we serve are receiving Medicaid. What's also of note for Charlottesville is we serve more Charlottesville residents than residents of any other locality in our catchment area. You are our biggest customer, as it were. In terms of program outcomes, for mental health outpatient services for FY25, 95% of the people we serve said they were satisfied with the services they received. 90% of the people who we served from Charlottesville had no change or improvement in their employment. And in terms of SUD services, while in active SUD treatment, those reported that 100% had no new arrests in the previous 30 days of service. It's not that we've cracked the code on substance abuse treatment. It's that while in active service, people can engage in treatment and stay out of the criminal justice system while they're engaged. What's true for Charlottesville, but of course all of our localities, they were funded by federal, state, local funds, third-party payers like Medicaid, self-pay based on sliding fee scale, grants, and donations. We're heavily reliant on Medicaid, as you see here. Many of the people who come into Region 10 come through our emergency services. There are many entryways in. Oftentimes, it's someone experiencing a psychiatric emergency, and so the first time we talk with someone, they are in crisis, and so they engage with our crisis continuum. What is true to know is that in last fiscal year, we provided 11,000 crisis services to more than 2,000 Charlottesville residents. We did 2,607 evaluations, which means that we evaluated people to see if they needed a pre-screening for involuntary inpatient psychiatric hospitalization, and of those, 476 were Charlottesville residents. It's important to note that we've had an increase in evaluations. It's an indicator that people are going into crisis and reaching out for services, or a loved one is reaching out, or they interface with law enforcement who's connecting to an assessment. But our increase in hospitalization has been more modest at 4%. And I think that that's a real credit to the Anchor team, our Hearts team, the crisis continuum being built out, our community-based service providers. What we know is the beginnings of the proof of concept that if we have a robust continuum at the community level, people can divert from involuntary hospitalization and remain in the community, and we share that mission across service providers, and I think we're seeing some success there. It doesn't mean that the state psychiatric bed crisis is over. And it doesn't mean that there aren't times that people don't need inpatient hospitalization. It just means that people have more choices, and we can serve people while they remain with their families or with their natural support system, and that's positive. In terms of wellness recovery, that's our crisis stabilization unit. We provided 436 bed days to 70 city residents last year. And what's true for anyone that interfaces with our crisis continuum of care, we offer them a harm reduction kit, and we handed out almost 600 last year. That last bubble that you see on your slide is really, that's not Charlottesville specific data, and I want to note that, but I want to say, as you may know, community services boards have mandates through Code of Virginia. We are by law required to do any number of things, and that includes competency restoration, supporting people who were found not guilty by reason of insanity or in a state psychiatric facility returning back to the community. And we had served, close to 700 folks around that in our CTAC through NGRI and competency restoration. Region 10 is not required by code, but we see it as fundamental to our mission to be ready to respond to critical community incidents. And last year, overall, we responded to 28 requests for incidents in the community. We have 40 staff who are trained, 2 facility service dogs. We're here for the community when things occur and we need to provide support in the immediate. 3 of those incidents were in the city. And then our state beds, the crisis at the state psychiatric facilities, 16 state beds utilized is a significant decrease from the year before, and that's, I think, because of the community-based infrastructure. We're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the Opioid Abatement Authority, Charlottesville Impact. So you were asked 2 years ago to sign a cooperative agreement so that Region 10 could put forward 2 projects we wanted to implement in Charlottesville and the 5 surrounding counties. I want to express an awful lot of gratitude for both the financial support we received as well as the signature of support for the projects. We did 2 things with that support and money. We provided community outreach, and so between FY24 and today, we've had a 100% increase in residents served through community outreach, and we have distributed 673 harm reduction kits. That's in addition to the harm reduction kits that we distribute in crisis services. So we're saturating the community with ways to stay safe, and with that, we've been able to connect 23 people who are unhoused with SUD treatment inpatient, and we've been part of reversing more than 200 opioid overdoses. We're blown away by the statistics here because going out into the community in a low barrier, high touch engagement way just to have access to resource and conversation has been critical in connecting people to being safe, and some to service, but more to being safe initially. Our second cooperative agreement project was our crisis response and CTAC expansion. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but it's our crisis receiving center. It's a 3-legged stool. It is first our CTAC, our Crisis Intervention Team Assessment Center, where a road deputy can bring someone in who's under ECO and transfer custody to someone in the program for the purpose of assessment and determination of whether they need a TDO. It is our Crisis Stabilization Unit, known as Wellness Recovery, so that people can come in and have a voluntary short-term stay to divert from hospitalization and become more stable. And then 23-hour chair service, which is that someone can arrive, they can stay with us for up to 24 hours, receive peer support, maybe a PRN medication, some counseling, a nurse if needed, and with those interventions can divert from hospitalization, get connection to service, and move on to another community-based service. So our Opioid Abatement Authority project is a 5-year project, and in that time, we have made significant gains in both of these areas, and we'll talk a little more about CRC in a different slide. What is true for us is that we share the concern that the city shares around our unhoused. We have a partnership, it's a federal, state, local partnership for the Project for Assistance for Transitioning from Homelessness. It's our PATH program. It is 2 staff strong. It is a Region 10 staff and a partnership with On Our Own. And those 2 staff in the last year served 133 individuals. They made amazing progress in 295 referrals to all of those services you see on your slide, and connected 11 to permanent supported housing. We overall served almost 300 people who self-reported to being unhoused in the city last year, in addition to those served through PATH. Our Blue Ridge Center, which is here in the city, used to be a day program, and we heard from the community the desire to have a low barrier outreach and engagement program where people could come in for support or contact without having to go through an initial clinical assessment, which could take 2 hours, and all the formal procedures that happen that we're required to do when somebody enters for formal services. So we changed our programming at Blue Ridge Center, and we have people come in. It's a drop-in center, not a drop-off center. A drop-in center is something different than drop-off, which is someone in crisis, which means you can come in unscheduled. You could join a group. You could connect with a counselor. You could ask for concrete resources. You could come every day. You could come once in a while. And our goal is to be available and responsive, but also to make sure that people understand that when they're ready, if they become ready, we're going to provide them with other kinds of services. It's been an incredible connection. 94% of the people we served last year were from the city.
At the Blue Ridge?
At the Blue Ridge Center. We're working on a harm reduction vending machine, and that will be also placed right outside the Blue Ridge Center when that is built out. What's true about Region 10 is that we are not housing development. We're not landlords. But we do provide housing support. And we provide housing support last year to 429 individuals. So what that means is we have a number of different vouchers that are connected to the people who we serve, and we then connect them to housing. That is through any number of avenues, and it's only as strong as our ability to receive, sustain, and grow the number of vouchers that come in. So in the last year, 429, the greatest challenge for us is if funding is lost, and that has happened externally in a few places, or that there's not enough landlords who are willing to provide leases to our folks. When I got the invitation to come speak today, the request was challenges in the environment, what we might be seeing federally, and so I'll speak a little bit to both of those things. Medicaid access is a challenge in the environment. I think what you know is that the discussion at the federal level around Medicaid expansion has been a variable topic over time, and that our current governor has said that he does not have a plan to reduce Medicaid in Virginia. Well, you know, a number of things could change at any given time, and what we do know is that over the next 2 years, the plan is that there will be an increase in the need for reauthorizations. So people will have to be reauthorized for eligibility for Medicaid twice a year, whereas right now it's once a year. So that's the first thing to be concerned about for our population. And the second is that for people who are eligible under expansion, that the work requirements are increasing. The reason that those two things are challenges in the environment for Region 10 are that the people that we serve will have great difficulty, for the most part, in keeping up with twice-a-year reauthorizations, and the people that we serve, for the most part, are working, if they can, or wanting to work, if they can, or in school or volunteering, those kinds of requirements. If those requirements go into place, they are a barrier to access to insurance and has the same net effect as decreasing the funding for that population. As you saw on the first two slides, 56% of the people who we serve who have insurance are insured by Medicaid, and that overall could have up to an $18 million impact for Region 10 overall. If it's just expansion and we're just talking the city, we're talking closer to $2 million. It's noteworthy that I'm speaking of impact for behavioral health, impact to revenue for Region 10, but then there's just the community impact for overall wellness, because of course Medicaid helps people stay well, not just for behavioral health, but for physical health, dental, vision, I mean all the things we all need to stay healthy. And so we're watching Medicaid access, we're talking to our legislators about it, because what we want to see happen is, what does the federal government say that we have to do? What does Virginia have in its choice, in its purview to make choices around? And then we're going to advocate around the people who we serve having access to the insurance. Behavioral health redesign. There's a 2-minute primer on behavioral health redesign if you haven't been following it. The General Assembly tasked DMAS, Virginia Medicaid, to retire a number of legacy services at the end of this fiscal year and replace it with new services that are budget neutral. What's true for Region 10 is of those legacy services retiring, we provide one called mental health skill building. There are others that other providers are providing that have impact, but for Region 10, there are 100 people receiving mental health skill building today. When these services retire and the new programs come into place, they are not apples to apples. And so the question and the concern is, as we move forward with the new implementation, will those new services have reimbursement rates that allow us to provide the service? Will they be effective in keeping people well in the community? And what are the credentials that the people need to be able to provide the service under our licensing regs because of our third challenge in the environment, workforce development and retention. There's a national behavioral health workforce crisis. It's true in Virginia. I think that what you all know is that there are fewer behavioral health professionals coming into the workforce, and that's licensed and licensed eligible clinicians, psychiatrists, and nurses who want to do behavioral health community-based work. We have been working with our state association to advocate around reducing requirements under licensing so that we can attract a more robust workforce who can do the work, as well as ways we can increase our revenue to be competitive to attract fewer the people who are providing the services, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Last but not least for challenges, community-based services infrastructure. In as much as I think we collectively are doing a good job here in Charlottesville, the questions become, do we have enough community-based providers? Do they accept the insurance and the client population that might be served by Region 10 as well as others? And are they the right type of service for the community needs at any given point? And I think that there is more to do there. Region 10 priorities, Medicaid for all the reasons I spoke of. Workforce, I'm going to take a moment to talk about workforce just for one more minute. Region 10 staff are our greatest asset, our most valuable asset, and it's not just because it's the primary cost in our budget, right? It's not expense, and not because you need people to help people, but because it really takes a commitment of heart and mind. So Saturday morning, 8 o'clock, I was preparing for this presentation. I get a call from one of the senior leaders at Region 10, and she says that one of our residential facilities has caught fire. And she tells me, that here's the plan for the day, here's what's going on, and that the administrator on call lives within walking distance of the residential facility, and she got the call about the fire, and she put on her shoes and ran towards the program. She got there before the fire truck, and she helped people get out. And then she met the fire marshal. And when I talked with the senior leader the next day, Sunday, that same administrator on call had worked into the night to clean up after ServPro and the fire department and such, so that the gentleman we were serving could come back in. In the meantime, there had to be, I think, 15 staff. People missed parts of their daughter's Sweet 16 party. their weekend at the Bourbon Festival out of town, a date night with their husband, to make sure that the people that we served were in a safe place and had connection to service. Region 10 staff, they run towards the fire. And so our workforce is our most valuable asset because we ask 600 strong to run towards it every day. Are we able to put out the fire all the time? Absolutely not. But are we going to do everything we can to support? We are. And so in terms of our priorities, we're going to hold that as our one of our highest priorities, because if we support the people who are providing the service, we are going to provide better service to our community. Last but not least, certified community behavioral health clinics. I see certified community behavioral health clinics as a solution to the Medicaid and workforce challenge. The state of Virginia is seeking to apply to have all 40 CSBs in Virginia become certified as community behavioral health clinics, which allows for a prospective payment system, which is a formula-based system to determine actual cost of service and be reimbursed prospectively for that service. It would increase our service capacity, increase our salaries, have more reliance on federal funding than state funding because it's a federal program. And so we've been in contact through our association with the incoming governor to advocate for all CSBs becoming certified as community behavioral health clinics. Region 10 initiatives, the Crisis Receiving Center, that three-legged stool I spoke of, we received Opioid Abatement Authority funds as well as funds from our State Department. That project, to receive the state funds, required that we expand our physical footprint. What we've done is we've bought a building on Avon Street just behind Ting Pavilion. We're super excited about it. To be able to move our administrative services out of our old Lynchburg Road campus to expand our Crisis Receiving Center. So we are in the middle of doing that. And in the new building on Avon Street, we will have HR and IT and conference space and training space at the end of the downtown mall. But even more than that, we begin to have a physical presence right here. And we look forward to being right here at the end of the mall. We look forward to having people come into our facility and coming down on the mall, seeing how we can be of service over time. You all will receive an invitation. I hope you come to our open house, which we have targeted for February. More to come on that. Mobile crisis services, we're expanding mobile crisis response as part of our crisis continuum of care. Community outreach, we need to continue to look for non-traditional ways to engage people and support them in coming in for service or receiving service out in the community. And then priority 1 waiver for DD services. Governor Youngkin had the bold initiative that we supported to have all people who were on the waiver wait list, who were priority 1, top priority, funded over 2 years. And that has occurred. It does not mean that there aren't new people who pop into that priority 1 waiver wait list, or we need to support those who have not moved into priority 1 to keep from needing more urgent emergent priorities. That remains an initiative for us. We also support building out of community-based providers for the DD population specifically. So these are your appointees. And you'll see that Dave, Joe, and Francesca are here today. We're glad to have them. Alex, Joe, and Francesca are in the middle of their term. And Alex is our vice chair, Francesca is our secretary. Dave is our fearless chair of the board. And so his term
Joe's
ends.
a freeloader, right?
He's in the middle of his term. I would back up with that. Got stuck there. Dave's term ends into June. And so without Dave's knowledge or consent, this is my shameless plug for reappointment for Dave Opper as our board chair. What you all I'm sure know, is the learning curve to understand the mission and work of Region 10 is very challenging. It takes a year, at least, of being on the board to understand it. And each of these representatives bring a different strategy, a different level of expertise, a different frame of reference, all very valuable to our organization. I want to thank you for their appointment, support Dave's reappointment while I have you here, and I will take questions from there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lloyd, I'll start with you, sir.
I guess the first time I started dealing with you, Lisa, was 4 or 5 years ago when we started talking about what is now the Anchor program. And I just want to say that you were very helpful at that point in helping us understand what has to happen from your end of things. I'm curious as to how you have a sense, what your sense is of how the city and the county, of course, they have slightly different programs, slightly different acronyms, if nothing else, but how those are working and what changes, if anything, you think you would identify that we would need.
I'll say that one of the greatest values of the Hearts and Anchor team is that they are not constricted by some of the regulatory oversight requirements that are required for community service boards. So both of those teams were built strategically and with enough agility to be responsive in creative ways without having to do some of the things that a regulatory environment such as Region 10 requires. So that's been of great value. I think that we have daily conversations with both teams, even if it's consultation, and at times we partner around services, other times not, and that's okay. What is true is that we each have a role. What I see is that for the Marcus Alert, between now and 2028, we will need to create that formalized framework and MOU that connects to the triage levels that the Marcus Alert requires and bring a strong connection so that PSAPs can transfer calls to the call center for people in
PSAP?
crisis. The communications, our communications folks, so that they can transfer calls to the 988 crisis line. That's the work to do. So
How much of that is going to end up getting dictated by the state in any event?
I think
I know you talk about developing an MOU, but
the MOU is prescribed. I think the question is, and this was the question 4 or 5 years ago, what do we want for the residents of the city of Charlottesville? And then if we want multiple co-response teams, or we want to be sure communication and 988 have that tight call transfer connection, then let's build that. What we're waiting on related to the Marcus Alert is, one, there's some funding that is supposed to be promised in 2028. I say supposed to be, nothing is for certain. And two, those baseline requirements are just that, baseline requirements. And so let's meet the baseline requirements, the MOU and the triage levels, and then have a more robust conversation about what else do we want for this city. And I think the Anchor team is a great start to that.
thank you.
Brian?
Yeah. Excuse me. First of all, Peanut, thank you for coming to see us, and thank you for all of the work that Region 10 does. I was on the board for just a little while, and it really is an amazing organization. One of the things that I've wondered in my time here, and since I'm not going to be here next year during budget season, I'll just...
Which we know you will miss.
Yes, I will. I can't recall exactly how the funding formula works in terms of the various counties that make up Region 10. My recollection is that the funding in absolute numbers hasn't really gone up that much, at least over the time that I've been here. So just a pitch, particularly since I'm not here, and we have Ms. Fleischer, who will be here next year and is an expert in this field. My pitch is that y'all ask for more money.
Thank you. We did ask for more money. Yes, we did.
It's very
Thank you,
easy for
Brian.
me to do, but
No comment.
I sincerely, the CSB is, it's foundational for the way the state government has set things up. It's really foundational. And every time we have a conversation, not every time, we often have conversations about one problem or another, or issue or opportunity, whatever you want to call it. And Region 10 is always in one of those sentences. Region 10 will help with this, Region 10 will help with that. And anyway, good luck, Mr. City Manager.
Natalie?
No questions for me right now, but mostly in the interest of saving time. Thank you so much for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Oh, and do we have a closed session?
Yes.
Then, I mean, even right now, it might make sense for us to move the item after this to the beginning of our regular meeting. I mean, otherwise, we're going to have like
15
10 minutes total for them.
I don't know how long we're gonna need, so that's.
We can,
We
do
can do
do we
that.
have a big closed session?
We have 3 items to
Yeah.
discuss.
Yeah.
It might take a little time.
Yeah. Go ahead,
But
Mike.
that clock is wrong.
Yeah, yes.
I know, but I mean, we're still going to be very
Yeah.
rushed on a topic
big
that
thing.
Yeah.
is important to the public, but whatever. So to add to Brian's question, the city's given about $1.2 million total, and that's been completely flat and unchanged since at least 2022, so at least 4 years. If the city was open to increasing that local funding to increase service or provide an additional service within Charlottesville, is that something that would be, that you would see as feasible or of value to the organization?
It is feasible. I think the question, what I hear you asking is, our primary responsibility for city council is to serve the city of Charlottesville. And so how do we develop services that come back to Charlottesville residents? And could it be a special project? How does that work? And the answer is yes and yes. We have some clear ideas about gaps in service. I'm sure you all have clear ideas as well. If there was an initiative that we wanted to partner on for the city, yes, in fact, Region 10 is able and willing to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not as just as an observation, I think in our budget, I think Region 10 is our only organization that has been completely flat for that length of time. And I don't know everything involved in that, but it does, I would just echo what Brian has said, and that it sticks out and that it's very unique that it's been that flat and unchanged, particularly in the environment, as you said, where we know there's just even greater budget challenges that you're going to be facing. A related question is, if there's a partner agency who on the housing side is able to provide assistance on the landlord piece, and there's funding sources from the city or other places, is that a partnership that you would see as feasible or open to as an organization? Or are there challenges like that you see there in terms of just what that practically really looks like?
What practically that looks like for us is that we have current partnerships where we provide mental health skill building services or case management. We provide wraparound services and supports to people in housing situations. We also can administer the vouchers. So that is how it works for us. Gosh, if there were, a shelter in place, would there be outreach that Region 10 would want to do there? Absolutely. Would there be an ability to try to connect people to services and supports for folks who are being served? Absolutely, we would have an interest in that, yes.
And final question for now is you've touched on, I mean, you all do incredibly important work. It's also very difficult work and a very challenging, budget situation statewide and federally. As part of that, where do you see, where Region 10 is right now in terms of the competitiveness of your wages, in the general market, and how much turnover do you see throughout the organization, and, is that wage and benefits level a significant part of that?
We have an 11% vacancy rate right now, point in time, 2% turnover. We have pockets that are more challenging than others, nursing being one, licensed clinicians being one, direct support professionals who work in our day program for folks with developmental disabilities. Our salary ranges are not out of line broadly. What's true is it's deceptive because what then we can hire someone for within that range is the challenge. So if Region 10 spent, I think, up to 10 years without COLA increases for a period of time 15, 20 years ago. Hard times. And people stayed through that. A number of people in this room stayed through those hard times. But what that meant was that our internal people with tenure at the organization were not getting raises on pace with what we are competitive to bring people in for. So today, if I have a 26-year Region 10 veteran, can I hire a person a year out of school at the same or less than my 26-year veteran, right, from an internal equity standpoint? And that's the challenge. So a rising tide lifts all boats, and our goal is to raise to reward people who have stayed with Region 10, raise salaries to the extent we can. We push that limit every year so that we retain our people, but that within that salary range, we can hire new people connected with internal equity at a higher range. We are 10 to 20,000 low across the board, I would imagine. Like just as, in a very casual way in this conversation. So our salary ranges, if you go out online, they may or may not be so off. It's what we can hire people into based on those factors.
Yeah, and I'll just say I appreciate that. I think that's so important for the community to hear, because I mean that's just so foundational. Even that ballpark number of being $10,000 to $20,000 below, and just all the impacts of that. And obviously, we've seen it in the city in our own context, especially during the pandemic and how that distorted wages and what we needed to do. So appreciate that, and appreciate the information and presentation tonight as well.
Thank you.
I just had a couple of comments. As I just want to concur about the salaries from my many years working at the Career Center. We will often get some workers who, wanted to change jobs because of, better compensation or something. So I'm glad that that's something that you're looking at. And I don't remember if it was Brian or Lloyd that talked about, the importance of you in the community. I was meeting with some people from Impact already, the organization, and I'm sure that, again, Region 10 will be mentioned in probably some of their priorities this year. So you're integral in what we do in the community. I didn't realize the impact that you have on housing. I think it's over 420, units. So that's significant. So thank you for your work in there. You had mentioned something about the community, the surveys. If you could just spend a minute talking about how you gather community input on what you do in your programs.
So we offer quarterly a request for feedback for people actively in service. We do discharge surveys for people leaving service. And then we have an opportunity for people to offer feedback on our website at any time. In addition, we have access to our compliance staff if there's a concern about something that occurred, and we have a formal process to respond, and then a statewide number if somebody wishes to call the state. What is also just part of the culture of what occurs is that we sit in partnership with stakeholders and community partners every week, and we are receiving informal verbal feedback regularly around what people would like to see us do more or different or the same. So in all those ways.
Right, right. And I think the informal is, you know, that's how I get a lot of my input, just seeing people in the street. So
Yeah.
I want to thank the city residents for serving on the board and your incredible staff for being here. And if you could give the resident manager that went out and,
Savannah Brock.
and the staff that, gave up their weekend, those are untold stories about the impact that you are doing and how we're serving the client. So thank you, and please share our gratitude to them as well, that we know that they're making a difference out there, and we appreciate the work that they do. So thank you all so much. Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
So, Mr. Mayor, we'd like to move the third item to the next agenda on December 1st. That actually gives staff additional time and no rush, and then it wouldn't really work for some of them to be able to stay a little bit longer.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly and staff. Appreciate y'all for being here. So.
Do we have to vote on that, to just changing the agenda?
It's just a report, so
Okay,
just make
no
sure it's
worries.
on the next
Okay.
agenda.
Thank you all so much. We're going to agree to go into closed session. Thank you, Region 10, and everyone for being here.
We definitely can't fit that into 8 minutes.
Granted, it wouldn't be the presentation, but it's an 80-page.
Yeah.
One, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A7 for consultation with legal counsel pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body. And two, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A8, which permits closed sessions for consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel.
Second?
We doing verbal vote? All in favor, please say yes.
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 All opposed, please say no. Thank you.